And it appears that we are. So yeah, we can get started.
Very good. Thanks, Sean. All right. That being said, we'll call the August 24th, 2020 Zoning Board of the Town of Richmond meeting to order. In accordance with the Executive Order 2020-05 by Governor Gina Raimondo on March 16, 2020, this meeting is being held teleconference live on Zoom. I'll do a roll call of each member could state they're present. Chair Nick Solitro present. Vice Chair Jeff Valancourt.
Present.
Board Member Sean Carney.
Sean, you're muted. Thank you. What's that?
Do we hear Sean?
Yeah, he's here.
All right. Board Member Chelsea Battinger.
Present.
Board Member Daniel Jarsifer.
Present.
Board Alternate Karen Bazzano. Karen's still not here. And Board Alternate Lindsay Hannon.
Present.
All right. I see that our solicitor Karen Ellsworth is also present, as is the planner Sean Lacey, zoning official Russell Bo Brown, and zoning clerk Sam Patton, as well as our stenographer Mary Ellen Hall.
Did you forget Jeff?
Did I forget Jeff?
Yeah. You made roll call.
No, Jeff was first. Vice Chair Jeff Valancourt, right?
Sorry, Nick.
That's okay. Just a notice to everybody, in order to maintain order and avoid background noise, we'll keep everybody muted as we review each agenda item and unmute those individuals wishing to speak as we move through the agenda. If you're joining us by computer or via the Zoom app on your cellular phone, you have an option to raise your hand. It should be on your screen. And if you wish to make a comment during any of the agenda items, please raise your hand on the Zoom app or on your phone using your user controls, and staff will unmute you. If you're joining by phone and wish to raise your hand, you'll need to dial *9 to raise your hand, and once called upon, please
The only
dial
thing I see
*6.
is the agenda that Karen Ellsworth sent me
So,
several days
we can
ago.
hear you. We can hear you, just so you know.
And-
You need to mute yourself while Mr. Solitro.
Yeah, I just muted John Pacino. Sorry about that.
Okay. Sorry.
Once called upon, if you're on your phone, please dial *6 to unmute yourself. I want to remind the zoning board members and the public that each time you speak, because of the format we're presenting this in, or we're hearing this meeting tonight, you'll need to identify yourself each and every time so that everybody knows who's speaking. It sounds a little awkward, it's a little uncomfortable, but each time, if everybody could say your name beforehand, that'd be helpful, certainly for our stenographer. With that, we'll go to the minutes, which is agenda number B on our agenda, the minutes of June 22nd, 2020. Trust people, everybody's had an opportunity to review those minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Or any issues with the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of June 22nd, 2020.
Do we have a
Don
second?
Carney, I'll second.
All in favor? I see Jeff raising his hand, aye. It makes sense if we can just do a roll call. Jeff Valancourt? I see thumbs up.
You need to say it, Jeff. Say yes. He's muted.
Yes.
You need to say it verbally, Jeff, for me.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Sean Carney,
Yes.
Chelsea Battinger,
Yes.
Daniel Jarstifer,
Yes.
myself, yes. That's all we need, Karen, right?
Correct.
All right. We will go to item D on the agenda. Actually, could we take this out of order? I know some people are interested in the Wawalome reservation matter, which I understand we received a correspondence to continue that matter. Karen, do we need to make a motion to have this out of order, or can I just?
No, you can just take it out of order.
Okay.
You just need a motion to continue it to your September meeting date, which is, what is that, Sam?
I believe it was the 24th. I have to double check. Sean, do you have that?
28th.
28th.
28?
Yeah.
All right. All right, so we'll address item letter under new business E, number 1, the application of Wawa Loam Reservation, Inc. for a special use permit to modify a previously approved special use permit to replace approved batting cages with a 70 by 165 foot storage building, premises located at 510 Gardner Road, Assessor's Plat 1E, lots 17, 10-15, and 19-22, pursuant to chapters 18.48 and 18.52 of the Richmond zoning ordinance. We did receive a correspondence from attorney Stephen Surdit requesting a continuance of this matter. I'll make a motion to continue that matter to a date certain, September 28. Do I have a second?
Second. Jeff Valencourt.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Daniel says aye.
Sean?
Carney, aye.
We missing anybody?
No, all you need is 5 votes.
Okay. Then we're, that matter, the Wawa Loam matter, which I understand some people are here this evening on, has been continued to September 28th. That will bring us back to continued business. Number 1, the application of Richard and Barbara Dale.
Excuse
special
me, I'm
use-
sorry, Nick. Could you do the other one first?
Oh, I'm sorry. And you know what? And I should have known because I saw Robin Main in here. Robin, I apologize. I should have done that first
It's only
before
going to
anything.
take 2 seconds.
Yeah, yep, I will. So subsection C.
Not a problem, thank you.
Well, yeah, sorry about that, Robin. Pursuant to a judgment entered in Superior Court on July 30th in Freepoint Solar LLC versus Richmond Board of Review, approval of the special use permit requested by Freepoint Solar LLC in accordance with the conditions for approval stated in the zoning board's written decision recorded on December 18th, 2019. Karen, can you walk us through that?
The Superior Court reversed the zoning board decision, and judgment has already been entered. The judge sent it back to the zoning board to grant the special use permit, so this is more of a symbolic vote than anything else. All you need to do is approve it. In fact, you can't do anything else but approve it.
I'll make a motion to approve that matter remanded to us by the Superior Court. Is it granting the special use permit, Karen?
Yes, it is granting the special use permit.
Granting the special use permit. Do I have a second?
Can you go on record as a no?
No, you can't. I'm sorry.
This is Chelsea Batinger. I second Nick's motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sean Carney, aye.
Daniel Jarster, aye.
Jeff Valencourt?
I don't agree with it on the record, but aye.
All right. So that is granted. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you all. I appreciate it. Take care.
All right. That brings us to, on the agenda D, continued business, the application of Richard and Barbara Dale for a special use permit to establish a winery at a vineyard at 18 Beaver River Road, Assessor's Plat 7E, lots 20-9 and 20-10, pursuant to section 18-16-010, use code 905, and section 18-52-060 of the
I say
Richmond
say it
zoning
again,
ordinance.
section, the last one, section what?
18-52-060 of the Richmond zoning ordinance. I understand the applicants are represented by counsel this evening.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Attorney Stephen Surdit for the applicant.
Good evening, Attorney Surdit. If you want to kind of walk us through this application or
Sure, I'd
any
be
type of
happy to.
presentation you want to make on behalf of your clients, we're happy to hear it.
Absolutely, and I will try to be brief and not be redundant. My clients and I have constructed and submitted what we believe are very detailed plans and a very detailed proposal regarding their intent to what to do with their property. As the board knows, we're here regarding property located at 18 Beaver River Road, lots 20-9 and 20-10. This is located in an R3 zoning district. What the applicant is looking to do is what we believe it to be.
I'm sorry, Mr. Sirdike, could you please speak up a little bit? The applicant is looking to,
The applicant is looking to continue an historic use in the Beaver River Valley here, which is historically an agricultural area, has been used for many different kinds of horticulture or agricultural uses. The applicants can actually do their agricultural use of growing grapes on the site by right. The applicant here tonight is looking to have both a winery and a vineyard here at the location. And it is a special category within your use table, I believe specifically to allow in R3 zones boutique uses such as this one, where the applicants are looking to bring a use to the town and bring a activity to the town that will be in conformance with the town's comprehensive plan of promoting agriculture and agricultural activities, as well as economic development in a way that is in conformance or in congruity with the historic uses of the town and the agricultural and rural nature of the town. The applicants have lived here for a number of years. They moved here for the same reasons that other folks in the area moved here, which is its rural and historic agricultural nature. The applicants have taken great care in coming before the board this evening, and we've taken the time to speak with their staff regarding the concerns that staff members had regarding the property and the project, and that's what you see regarding the questions that we posed and answered to the board as part of our application, essentially our supplemental portion of our application. Most notably in that, I think it's important to note that the applicants used
most notably in that, I'm sorry.
that the applicants use no caustic materials. Nothing that they use in their operation even rises to the level of having a MSDS or a chemical description. Everything they use in their application is potable or edible to within the human body, that they use less than 200 gallons or up to 200 gallons of water a year. So less than a gallon of water a day in their proposed operation, as well as their operation is governed by a number of state laws regarding alcohol production and alcohol sales on wineries and vineyards. I'd like the opportunity to introduce you to the applicant very shortly and address some of what we believe more important aspects and what I believe the board members are looking for, as well as some of the abutters. I understand there were two letters received by the board and board staff prior to today's meeting, at the prior meeting when this matter was continued. We took great care in trying to address any concerns that were articulated in those letters, as well as we opened our doors to all of the abutters within 200 feet. And actually we went beyond that to folks that we believe possibly could be impacted by this use. We extended past 200 feet as some of the folks that live here on Beaver River Road, due to the nature of the properties being large, were outside of 200 feet, but we wanted to make sure that we could address any concerns they had. And no one contacted us regarding either coming to the site or meeting at my office, which is located in Westerly. I know it's a bit of a hike, but was located nearby to address any questions, concerns, or even thoughts that abutters had regarding this project, as we do want to address their concerns, and we want to continue to be compliant with the comprehensive plan and address any and all, and be neighborly, to put it as succinctly as possible. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce Mr. and Mrs. Dale, who are on here as well. And with that being said, may I have them sworn in, Ms. Clerk?
Attorney Serta, just one moment. I see that Karen Ellsworth does have her hand raised.
I
Karen, go ahead.
just wanted to remind Stephen that he needs to do what he's about to do, which is go through a series of questions and answers, because nothing that he says on the record can be used to make a finding of fact, because he's a lawyer. And we don't pay any attention to lawyers around here. It has to come from the applicant himself. So he needs to give us all the information he just gave us in the form of answers from his clients.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Ms. Clerk, if you could swear in Mr. Dale at this point.
That would be Mary Ellen. She does the swearing.
I apologize. Thank you. Ms. Stenographer, if you could swear them in.
My wife will be here in just a second.
Okay.
Okay, we're ready.
I'm going to ask you to raise your hand separately, though, okay? Just because I like to swear people separately. Mr. Dale, would you raise your right hand for me, please? Do you solemnly swear the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Please state your full name for me.
Yes, my name is Richard Charles Dale.
Thank you. Mrs. Dale, would you raise your right hand for me? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Please state your full name for the record for me.
Barbara Mary Dale.
Margaret, you said? Margaret
Barbara,
Mary
yes.
Dale.
No, Barbara.
Oh, Barbara. Okay, Barbara Mary Dale. Margaret.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. and Mrs. Dale, as you know, we're here tonight regarding a request for a special use permit. And as we've discussed, we have to put certain elements on the record, and you understand that?
We do.
Yes, we do.
Okay. So with
Mr.
that,
Sirdat, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we only do one person at a time. I can't do the testimony of both of them at the same time.
understood. So then I will inquire of Mr. Dale first.
Okay,
and then if
thank
we
you
need
very much.
Additional backup, we'll inquire of Mrs. Dale.
Okey doke, thank you.
Mr. Dale, this property at 18 Beaver Road is Beaver River Road is your primary residence?
It is.
And you intend throughout this operation for it to continue to be your primary residence, correct?
It will.
And you came into this as a hobbyist into the wine industry, so to speak, correct?
Correct. Yes, we've been making wine since around 2014 for personal use.
Okay. And how long have you lived here at the property?
Since 2008.
Okay. And so you've been making wine here in a hobby capacity since 2014.
Correct.
And at this time, you're actually growing grapes on the premises, correct?
We are.
And you and I have had discussions that your grapes are doing better than anyone could have expected, correct?
Yes, it's actually ahead of schedule. Apparently, the grapes that we planted seem to really like the soils here, and they're about a year ahead of schedule, so they're doing really fantastic.
So those historic soils out here in the agricultural Beaver River Valley are still working well.
I think so.
Okay. Now you are asking this board tonight for a special use permit to locate a business which is allowed via special use permit in an R3 zone, correct?
That is correct.
And as part of that, I'd like to inquire with you about some details about your business and the operation as it goes forward, correct?
Okay.
So you are currently doing all of the work on the site with friends and family, correct?
That is correct.
And we have labeled this a boutique winery. And the reason and can you explain why we've labeled it a boutique winery?
Yeah, I mean, in the wine industry, it's kind of like a equivalent of like a microbrewery, I guess you could say it, in the sense that it's not designed to be a large commercial enterprise. Instead, our goal is to have a small offering of the wines that mostly of what we're going to grow on the property, create that, enjoy it for our friends, our family, and also hopefully to share it a little bit with the local community. We're pretty proud of the wine that we're making, and we think there will be others that will be interested in consuming it as well. But like I said, for the size of the property and for the size of the amount of grapes that we can grow, it's a small, what they call a boutique winery, and that's what we're pursuing.
And as part of that, currently, you don't have any employees, correct?
Correct, no employees.
And potentially, you may have some employees going forward, correct?
Yes, we kind of envision it possibly. I believe the way we answered the question to the town is, at this moment, we may contemplate hiring seasonal folks to help us actually bring in grapes. And then we may have some part-time individual to, if we have a tasting room on the property, to man the tasting room when the principals are not available.
Okay. I'm gonna, just for my own education, as well as I think a little bit the board's, can you describe the actual winemaking operation and then what you intend to do in your tasting room as part of your commercial activity? Can you hear me?
You're frozen. I think Sean's frozen too.
All right, well, if you give me a moment here, we'll all go on the same computer here. We'll work with the technology's limitations.
Hello, sorry about that. Having some technical difficulties. So could you pose the question again?
Certainly. What I wanted you to do is describe the physical winemaking operation that you intend to have on the site so that the board can understand the size and scope of that operation.
Are you talking in terms of space?
Both. In terms of
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, but I can't hear you at all. You're way too far away from the mic.
I'm sorry, the question I asked Stephen was he talking in terms of process of making wine or in terms of the actual infrastructure or the space? And so Stephen indicated he would like to hear about both. So I'll take an attempt at describing that. The winemaking process is pretty straightforward in the sense that it involves harvesting grapes, crushing and destemming the grapes, allowing them to do a primary fermentation, and then a secondary fermentation that lasts for approximately eight months. It's stored all on site. It's stored in enclosed containers that vent out, basically fermentation vapors that come out. But other than that, it's fairly inert inside the house. For the logistics itself, we're currently doing it in about 1,000 square foot basement on my addition that we put on the side of the house. That's where we currently do it. I believe if you can tell from the plan that we put going forward, if we find some success with the operations, we are considering building an outbuilding. And I believe I described that, I think, to the town. If we do that, it would be like a barn type structure in which we would move the fermentation process out to the outbuilding. And one of the things that we'd like to be able to do, and we went around, we gave it a lot of thought about what we'd like to do with the barn, and we would like to kind of model it after a historic Richmond barn. We found one of them in the actually a journal, I guess, that the town put together for dealing with historic architectural treasures of the town. And we found the barn. I think I included it. It's the one that's on Clark Farm on Lewiston Avenue. And if we get that far along, we're gonna build a barn that basically is modeled after that particular barn.
Now, part of your operation is obviously you're putting things in vessels, and you said that there is an emission.
Yes.
Is that a emission full of odors, or is it benign?
No, it's actually there's virtually no odors. What it is it's basically during the fermentation process, there's a certain amount of bubbles that come out of the wine, and what you want to do is you want that bubbles to be able to vent out, but you don't want oxygen going into the wine, because if you let oxygen get in the wine, it'll spoil the wine, actually turn it into vinegar. So basically the only time there's any kind of an odor that comes off the wine is during the initial 7-day fermentation, in which the wine is actually fermented in an open vat. And then it's transferred after 7 days to these closed vessels, and the closed vessels have they're odorless. There's no emanation of smell that comes out of them. They just kind of sit there for the better part of 8 to 9 months.
So a majority of your operation occurs in brief pushes of activity, and then there's fermentation where you're sitting and waiting for the wine to, the ferment.
Correct. There's a big flurry of information of activity right at the very beginning when you harvest and crush the grapes. You have a series for about 7 days in which you're actually working with the grapes. You have to kind of what they call punch it down. You gotta push the skins back down into it to get the color properly in that. And then after 7 days, you squeeze you transfer the liquid that's off the bottom into a vessel. You squeeze the remaining basically pulp and the skins to get the last bit of juice out of it. You put that in a vessel. And then pretty much after that, it's relatively hands off, except for about every month and a half. We have to move the wine from one vessel to another vessel in order to get what they call the lees, which is the precipitant.
In order to get the
lees, L-E-E-S, which is it's basically as the yeast is converting the sugar in natural grapes to alcohol. During that conversion process, there's a participant that drops to the bottom, and it collects on the bottom.
And the type of equipment that you're using to do all these activities is relatively benign. There's nothing that generates noxious odors, loud noises. You believe you can comply with all noise ordinances and not have an impact on the surrounding community or the surrounding environment?
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, most of the mechanical part about it is us. We lift it, we move it for the most part. We actually just bought a very small pump that pumps the stuff in order for us not to have to lift these demijohns, which are about 14 gallons of wine at a time. We finally broke down and bought a pump where we pump it from one vessel to another.
And that would be akin to a sump pump or an aquarium pump that people would have at home?
Yes, it's about roughly the pump is about that large. Makes a small humming noise when it's on.
You wouldn't hear that outside of your house or outside more than a few feet away from the pump, correct?
Yeah, you wouldn't even hear it outside of the room that we're using it in.
Now, the amount of wine that you're allowed to produce is governed by state regulation, correct?
That is correct.
In fact, most of your activities are governed by state regulations, correct?
Right. Well, for personal use right now, we're not governed because we're allowed to make a certain amount of wine for personal use, and we've been doing that. We're way under what the limits are for the state to be able to do that. Once we actually, if we are approved and we go forward with the winery business, it'll all be state regulated, and the state gives you very strict controls of how much wine you can make, what limits you can make, and also it controls who you can sell it to as well.
And one of the things that everyone is worried about with good reason in this region is water, because everyone's on a well and there's no public water system. So is it fair to say, and we'll go into the details, that you believe you'll have no impact on the water table or add any negative impact to the quality of the water?
Absolutely not. I will have no impact. We use so little water. There's no water actually used at all in the process. It's grape juice. I mean, that's what the body is of the wine.
I'm sorry, there's no water used in the process.
Correct. Grape juice is the liquid that we're dealing with. So it's the natural, grape juice that emanates from the grapes before they're crushed. And the only water we're using is water really to wash out the vessels. As I described before, when you move wine from one vessel to another, you have to then clean the vessel that it was in, and you just use basically warm water, and that's it, and it washes right out.
And you don't use any caustic agents in cleaning of your vessels or in any other part of your operation, correct?
That is correct.
And in fact, the only thing you use is an acidic sulfide with it that is actually edible and is often included in the winemaking process and remains in the wine, correct?
That is correct. It is a sulfide base. It is actually sulfites are added to the wine at various stages in order to basically stabilize the wine, and it acts as a preservative, so you can ingest it. And like I said, we use it in very small portions in the washout sequence, but like I said, it's very non-toxic.
And you believe that when using less than a gallon of water per day in your operation, no more than 200 total, as well as no solvent, you'll have no impact on your OWTS, your on-site wastewater treatment system, and that it will be more than capable of managing the small amount of water that you're using on this site.
Yeah, absolutely. Last I checked, I think our system is rated for 600 gallons per day, is what our septic system is rated. I believe I provided the permit information to the town. And we virtually, most days we don't use any water, of course, because the vessels are sitting there. On the days we do, if we, use more than 30 gallons or 40 gallons, it's probably less than what you would, take in a
So on
couple.
the days we do, I didn't hear what you said after that.
Yeah, and the days that we do use water, it's probably in the 30 or 40 gallon range. I would imagine it's probably less than 2 showers.
Now you're going to be operating a commercial operation here. What do you foresee with regards to deliveries and other aspects as you get set up? Do you believe, will you have deliveries every day, every week? How often will items be delivered here, and in what manner?
Well, for the most part, when it comes to deliveries, normally we pick up all the equipment that we need. We go by, we buy the bottles, we use our own personal vehicles, to go get bottles. That's what we're going to probably continue to do, use our personal vehicles. We do get some deliveries from time to time using Amazon, from various small parts and equipment that we buy, which is very small. Things like corks and maybe things like labels might come by Amazon. We do envision, one of the things that the state does allow us to do is to augment the grapes that we grow here on the property to a certain extent with grapes that we can actually import in. And so probably once a year, we might have maybe a box truck potentially bringing in one load of grapes, but they will all come at the same time, and it would be just one delivery once a year. We would still probably pick it up ourselves. We would probably deliver it ourselves, but it would be a little bit of a larger vehicle than what we'd normally use.
And you'd be able to do all of the loading and offloading off of the road. So it would simply be one trip up the road and one turn off and one turn back onto the main road.
Correct. And we'd be able to back the step van or the truck right back down into the driveway, which has easy access right to the winery, whether it would be currently in our existing residence or whether it would be in the outbuilding into the future.
And you as part of this application and part of your winery, you do intend to have people coming here on a limited basis for the purposes of tasting your wine and looking at your facility. The documents you've submitted to the court to the board suggest that you could have up to 11 parking spaces and up to 11 vehicles here at any given time, correct?
That is correct.
And you do not anticipate any more than that number of vehicles being here at any given time, correct?
Yeah, we don't anticipate that. Like I said, it's going to be a very small operation. It's a boutique winery. Probably, it'll be by word of mouth if anybody wants to come and visit. If it grew to a point where, we were taxing the amount of parking that we had, we would probably have to sit down and institute some way of controlling the flow. We would probably sell pre-tickets or something like that to make sure that we don't overly impact, the town road in some way.
Now, the parking area and access to the tasting area are going to be using an existing curb cut, correct? You're not going to have to add any additional entrances or exits to Beaver River Road?
That's correct.
And in our review of this, one of the concerns that was raised by abutters is that your residential driveway or residential access point is close to a turn. Do you intend to use that in any part, that residential access point in any way in this operation?
No, I can understand that. We've come out of our residential driveway a few times, and there have been quite some speeders coming down Beaver River Road. Anybody that lives on this road knows that it's a problem that we have, here on Beaver River Road. But that's not the driveway we'd be using. The one that we're talking about is on the far other side of the 20-9 parcel, and on that side it's in a flat area straight away, and there's no concern that would be like as it would be coming out of our other driveway.
Okay. And you also intend to primarily operate on weekends and holidays, correct?
Yes, yes. We're doing this as, like I said, it's a hobby for us at most. I mean, my wife and I have had long careers. This is going to be a thing that we would like to do into our twilight years as we go on. Clearly, we don't want to make it be, a huge commercial enterprise. And we envision it being manageable, small and manageable for us. And so for us, we dedicate some of our weekends, maybe a holiday to that, but we certainly don't want to be running the operation, 7 days a week.
And the area that we are proposing based on the plans for current parking is actually currently screened from the roadway, correct? There is an existing vegetative buffer.
Yeah, basically down our whole property, all the way across the entire front of our property is in front of our principal property is pretty wooded, and then all down the length of the property. If anybody's driven the road, you just kind of get little glimpses of our property inside. So there's a natural screen that goes down the entire length of the property.
And you have no, and you're going to maintain that screen. You have no intent to remove that or modify it in any way. Correct?
Absolutely not. We like that screen. I'd actually like to boost it up if I can.
I actually would like to.
To boost it up, make it even a little thicker if we could.
Now you have described that you are, if should at any point in time parking become an issue, you intend to institute controls such that it will not impact the ability to pass, repass, and drive up and down Beaver River Road safely.
Yes, that's what we would do.
And what you can sell to customers on the site is actually very limited by state regulations, correct?
It is.
And you have no intent, obviously, to modify state regulations in any way.
Not in any way.
So you believe that the proposal here that we've put forth to the board will not harm the safety and welfare of the community in any way, correct?
I absolutely believe that. And I believe my wife would say the same.
And you believe that your agricultural use as a winery is actually in harmony and meets the general purpose of the zoning regulations as well as the comprehensive plan in using this historic agricultural area for continued agricultural purposes?
Yes, and I think that in the long run, if we establish our ideas, remember this is our principal property. We want it to be something that we're proud of. We want to be something that is beautiful for us to look at. We also want it to be something that blends in and is consistent with what we have. We love Richmond. We moved, as Stephen mentioned when we first came here. Part of the reason why we came here was for exactly that reason, which is to have the beauty of this agricultural area. We certainly don't want to mess that up. So we thoroughly believe that we can be able to do this harmoniously with the rest of what's going on down Beaver River Road. It's a beautiful road. I love driving it myself as we go back and forth, and I can't imagine doing anything to impact that.
So you do not intend to impact the traffic patterns or circulations on Beaver River Road in any way. And if at any point in time that does become an issue, you have a plan and set of controls to institute, correct?
Yes.
You don't believe you'll substantially harm or impact the surrounding property or your own property, correct?
Oh, absolutely not.
You don't believe that your activity will harm the water table or have any impact on the water table?
No, I don't think it has any impact at all.
You don't believe your property and your proposed use will emit any odors that can be smelled or detected off of your property, correct?
Absolutely. We do emit nothing that you will detect off the property.
You believe that you've submitted documentation to show that you can fit parking on the site and that it will not impact surrounding properties or traffic on Beaver River Road.
Yes, and I believe we submitted to the town. We had a surveyor come out, survey the property, helped us cite where we would put the proposed outbuilding if we get that far to be able to go do that. The layout is for the town to look at, but the parking area easily fits within within the area that we have available with minimal impact. And we're going to continue to use a gravel driveway. We're not going to pave that driveway. So as to not affect any of the water table. And
your parking area will be paved to remain permeable as well, correct?
Our primary residence driveway is paved, will remain paved, but this driveway will stay gravel. It will not be paved.
As well as the parking area adjacent to the driveway.
Will all be gravel.
Okay. And at no point in time do you ever intend to have vendors coming here for pickups no matter how big you get. You'll always be, if you are selling to any vendors, you'll be, in accordance with state law, you'll be transporting that in your personal vehicles or a personal style vehicle that would be owned by your winery or vineyard.
Yes.
I would welcome any questions the board members have at this time.
Any questions by anybody? I see Karen Ellsworth, the solicitor, has her hand raised. Karen, go ahead.
I do have a couple of questions. First, I think you need to go over the state farm winery statute in more detail.
I'm sorry, the farm what statute? I'm sorry.
Farm winery
Oh, thank you.
statute in more detail. You referred to it several times, but you haven't said anything about what it actually says. And I think there are a lot of people who would like to know what it says, but don't know how to look it up. The other question I have is, there's a site plan here that shows your proposed winery barn, but it has no yard dimensions. I can't see the dimension from the wetland edge. So I don't think that what you've submitted is adequate for the board to include it in the special use permit. There's also some reference in your application to a farm stand. The barn and the farm stand are two separate uses. So I'm very unclear about exactly what you're asking the board for in terms of outbuildings.
We would simply be asking for the barn. That would be, we made a parallel to a farm stand. We would not be asking for two separate structures.
Do you have a square footage calculation for the barn?
I believe we do have a calculation for the barn.
I think it's 3,600.
It's 3,600 square feet.
How far is it from the wetland edge?
I believe 20 feet.
It would be 20 feet from the, not necessarily the wetland edge, but would be both the buffer, the wetland buffer, and then the 25-foot setback as well.
The 200-foot riverbank.
So we both have a riverbank buffer and then a setback from the buffer, all of which we would be compliant with.
So how many feet is it from the buffer?
I believe, I think it's 10 feet from the 200-foot riverbank.
Okay. Stephen, can you go over the state law?
Certainly, it is for the benefit of anyone who wishes to look it up as we go along. It is Title 3, Chapter 3-6, Section 336-1.1, Farm Winery Licenses and Fees. And it goes through a number of details regarding what can and cannot be done at a farm winery. There are limitations on what can be done at each site. There are limitations on what can be sold both on-site and off-site. There are specific limitations to the amount of product that can be brought onto the site to incorporate into the production on the site. It goes up and down, it goes and changes over the course of the first 3 years. There are a number of specifics about the nature of consumption on the site as well. And I'm going to allow Mr. Dale to speak to some of the details that he's aware of based on his research, if I have omitted anything.
Yeah, and I think I'd like to just start by saying that the state of Rhode Island, created the statutory scheme in order to encourage the development of exactly what we're trying to do. The state of Rhode Island would like to have more domestic vineyards and wineries established in the state, and so they created this this permitting scheme in order for folks like us to be able to do small scale operations without having to go through the large. So I mean, so it's consistent with right up at the very first line of the statute specifically states that the reason why they've established a statute in the first place is to encourage the development of wineries and vineyards in the state. As you go through, as Stephen said, the statute itself is broken into various categories in which it, like I said, it has a step down phase of how much, I believe I mentioned earlier in the presentation that we can import grapes to augment the grapes that we're growing on our property. That allows you to do more grapes at the beginning, and it steps you down as your production level comes up that you grow on your property. You're not allowed to import as many grapes onto the property later on. So basically they're encouraging you to, the statutory scheme is encouraging you to grow your own grapes. And it kind of weans you off of bringing in outside grapes in favor of growing your own. So that's one section of the statute. The second section of the statute is it tells on who your customers can be. And it details very specifically on who you can sell to and what you can sell. So it's very regulated, very controlled. And of course we would comply with all of those
Yeah,
requirements.
but what does it say?
Well, do you want me to read it? It's there
yes.
are many multiple parts.
I don't want to hear. It's very
Can you
detailed.
excuse me? I'm sorry, I have to interrupt for 1 second. Can I just, I'm sorry, I have to turn this thing off. Here you go, then hang up.
I'm just gonna start right here. Yeah, I'm gonna go down.
Sorry about that. My house phone, I can't turn it off.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm going to be reading from subsection E of the statute, and
Be
it
nice
says,
and slow for me, please.
okay,
Thank you.
it says a wine grower may sell wine or winery products under his or her label and fermented by him or her or another wine grower licensed in the state. He or she may sell wine or winery products. And I'm going to read it to you. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 9 separate customers that we might be able to sell to if we get the permit. Remember, the permit I'm going to read to comes from the state, and so they might put controls on what we can sell and what we can't sell. But this is the full universe of what we might be able to sell under this particular statutory scheme. Number 1 is at wholesale to any person holding a valid license to manufacture alcoholic beverages. Number 2 is at wholesale to any person holding a valid wholesaler's or importer's license under section 3-6-9 and 3-6-11, presumably of this code. Number 3 is at wholesale to any person holding a valid farmer winery license under this section. 4 is at retail by the bottle to consumers for consumption off the winery premises, provided, however, a wine grower shall not sell wine at retail for delivery off the site of the winery premises in Rhode Island directly to Rhode Island residents, except in the manner provided for like sales and shipment in subsection 3-4-8. Number 5 is at wholesale to any person in any state or territory in which the importation and sale of wine is not prohibited by law. Number 6 is at wholesale to any person in any foreign country. Number 7 is at wholesale to liquor dealers holding a valid license under the provisions of Title III. Number 8 is at wholesale to restaurants holding a valid license under the provision of Title III. And finally, at retail by the bottle or by the glass for consumption on the winery premises. Then it goes on, there's additional controls. On subsection F, it says a wine grower may not sell at retail to consumers any wine or winery product not fermented in the state or sold under the brand of the winery. And then under subsection G, it says a wine grower may serve complimentary samples of wine produced by the winery where the wine is fermented in the state and sold under the winery brand name. Subsection H says all wines sold by the licensee shall be sold under any conditions and with any labels or other marks to identify the producer as the department may prescribe. And it says under subsection I, every applicant for a farmer winery license shall, at the time of filing an application, pay a license fee based on a reasonable estimate of the amount of wine to be produced during the year covered by the license. Persons holding a farmer winery license shall report annually at the end of the year covered by the license the amount of wine produced during that year. If the total amount of wine produced during the year is less than the amount permitted by the fee already paid, the state shall reimburse the licensee for whatever the fee was paid in excess. If the total amount of wine produced during the year exceeds the amount permitted by the fee already paid, the licensee shall pay whatever additional fee is owing. And that's the end of the statute.
Karen, do you have any details or any additional questions with regard to that?
I would like to know how much wine the Dales anticipate making per year.
Yeah, so under subsection C of the statute, it says a wine grower may import fruit, flowers, herbs, and vegetables produce not more than 7,500 gallons of wine during his or her first year of operation, not more than 5,000 gallons during his or her second year of operation, and not more than 2,500 gallons during his or her third year of operation, and not more than 1,000 gallons per year thereafter. So what ends up happening is that's what we can import in, plus what we have on our that we grow, and it depends on what the harvest is and what we can grow here on the property. But to give you some, I can give you some magnitude of if we're able to, what we currently have planted on the property now, that we estimate that if we have a bountiful year, we might be able to get somewhere around 3 tons of grapes. That translates into roughly 160 gallons per ton. So we would be talking what we're growing here on the property, roughly in the area of 450 to 600 gallons of wine of what we would be able to grow here on the property, augmented by whatever that we're allowed to be able to bring in, and personally what we can handle. Quite honestly, I don't think we can handle the kind of numbers that the state would even allow us to do. We're just not suited for that. Certainly in my second career, I don't want to do that. So, but I think I don't want to say exactly what the amounts would be, other than that it would be under what we're legally entitled to do, and it would augment what we're growing here on the property.
Are there any other questions from any other board members or comments from any other board members?
Yes, Nick, this is Daniel. I have several questions. Mr. Dale, based on what you just said, is the potential that works out to roughly 2,340 bottles of wine if you had 450 tons. Just full disclosure, I am a home hobby winemaker. I've been for 16 years. So I fully comprehend the process and even considered doing what you're doing. So obviously you don't have a certain number as to how many gallons you would make a year, but do you have an anticipated number based on how things are going this year?
Can we take a minute?
Yeah.
I wasn't prepared to answer that particular question, but if I could talk to my wife for a second, we could have a little discussion.
Just a ballpark.
Yeah, can we just have a minute?
Sure.
Thank you so much for the time. I appreciate that. It's just a question we had actually never discussed. We slowly do a little bit more each year, and so we just never did that. Because we can do about 450 gallons off of what we're doing here, we're clearly going to make that wine. And then we're probably thinking at the most, we'd probably import in grapes that would result in maybe at the most another 1,000 gallons. So maybe 1,500 gallons total is what we'd probably do.
Okay. Follow-up question to that. These aren't necessarily in any particular order. You mentioned that you would not have the, shipping vehicles coming in off the property other than like Amazon deliveries, that you anticipated transporting product from the property in your own vehicle. UPS will ship wine with the proper packing and everything. Do you anticipate that you will be selling wine and shipping through UPS?
No, we don't anticipate doing that.
Okay.
I think probably what we're going to end up doing is the people that we've talked about, our mentor that helps us on this project, we believe that I think our wine, we're going to be producing it in a limited volume, is probably going to be mostly consumed locally, to be quite honest. I think that, I believe what we're going to end up doing is having consumed very locally or in restaurants, that kind of stuff. I don't anticipate, and I don't think any of us anticipate actually shipping it anywhere in the sense that I just don't, we don't have the kind of volume to really do that, especially after we want to consume some of our own wine, and between our friends and families, we're going to be consuming some of the wine as well. So by the time it's all said and done, I think at the most part, we'll probably be dropping off all of our wine to the folks that are going to be using it. And I would assume most of it is going to be local businesses, preferably restaurants, that kind of thing.
Well, as a hobby winemaker, I can appreciate having some revenue coming in to cover the expenses. Another question I have, you mentioned that while it's fermenting, that bubbles are giving off a gas. Can you tell the board what those bubbles are?
Yeah, I think it's CO2 that's coming off.
Carbon dioxide.
Which would be an inert gas. It's not flammable or volatile or gives off any odor.
Right. And, just for the benefit of the board, where everybody's concerned about carbon emissions and CO2 gas, being a winemaker myself, I'm trying to imagine the increased scale, how much more carbon dioxide is. It's not, I'm not testifying, but I don't consider that that's a huge quantity. Other questions I have, in a couple of things I'm concerned about. One is you talked about the lees. The lees and then the grape pulp and stem seeds all will have to be disposed of. And, when you're talking 450 pounds, do you say, of grapes, or?
No, I think on the property itself and what we would import, we'd probably be dealing with
1,500.
Roughly around 3 tons.
Yes, and so that's a fair amount of material. What do you anticipate doing with the lees as well as the grape pulp and seeds and stems?
Yeah, I think that they're still at an amount that I believe that we'd be able to introduce into our septic system. It comes out, as you well know, in the process. Most of it is the washing out on the bottom. It would end up being pumped into the septic system itself. And there's such small amounts, and it's organic material. We don't believe it's going to impact the septic system.
Well, I agree with you. I think that's true for the lees, but the grape pulp and stems and seeds and everything, that's certainly not something that's going to go.
Yeah, no, probably. And I would agree with you at that point in time. Undoubtedly, we will have to either, depending on how that comes, to be honest, we haven't done that process yet in that kind of volume, but we would explore a waste disposal process in order to do that. Probably we would drop it off at an activity. I don't think, for that.
I'm sorry, probably drop it off where?
Yeah, we'd probably use a waste disposal company of some sort where we would actually take it to them in batches.
And it would be stored on site in such a way that it would not emit any odor, it would not attract animals, and would not be stored here for a significant period of time. Yeah, one of the things that I haven't explored this yet, but I also I haven't explored whether or not we could actually compost it and use it in a composting concept. So we might be able to actually, somehow turn it back into some type of fertilizer.
Right.
Here on
that
the
was going to be
on the property.
My follow-up question was going to be that, had you considered composting? And of course, that's something to be on site. The other question, being a winemaker, one time you said, quote, no water used at all. It's grape juice. But then you've gone on to say there would be 300 gallons or so for rinsing things out on the occasional use. And I think in the write-up where there was suggested there may be 300 gallons a year used. And it seems to me that that might be underestimated. With the production level you're talking about, I think you're going to use more water. That whether it rises to the level of causing any concern for other people on the water table, that I don't know the answer to, because it's not measurable. And I don't know if you have the answer, because you've not gone down that road, and I don't know if you're measuring the quantity of water that you're using either.
No, but
So I don't know if you.
But the reason why right now we use multiple smaller vessels is what we do. They're basically 14-gallon demijohns is a general rule is what we're using. The reason why I think that that is actually still a good number is because we're actually going to end up if we go and we're permitted to go forward and we get the license from the state, we're actually going to use larger retaining vessels that can hold more, with the lees being concentrated in one location. And so that's going to really dramatically reduce the washout. And so right now we have to wash out multiple smaller vessels. Instead of having 14-gallon tanks, we might have a poly 150-gallon tank, which would make it, or 250-gallon tank, and the lees would be concentrated at the bottom of that tank, making washout much more concentrated. So I still think that number, really you do it so infrequently, as maybe once every 5, 6, 7 weeks, you're racking the wine and having to clean the vessels. If you reduce your number of vessels, that's really going to dramatically reduce the amount of water. Now, I will say 300 gallons is an estimate based on, did we put a water meter in our basement when we were washing out vessels? No, we did not. But are we using water in a way that would in any way, shape, or form impact our well or impact the town water table? Absolutely not. I mean, we're talking really, really small amounts of water usage. The vast majority of the liquid that's involved in this process is grape juice.
Okay. One more question, and it goes to the traffic matter, which is what some of the abutters had raised as an issue. I live just maybe 1.25 miles from you, and I ride my bicycle down that road, and I'm actually drove by your place the other day to look at the situation, and so I actually have a visual picture in my mind. And one of the issues then is access and egress on and off the property. Initially, it may not be an issue, but as there's more employees or more people coming in to use the winery, and even as you've said in testimony, that there's a lot of people fly down that road, and I'm concerned about the safety. I experience that when I ride my bike down there, but I'm thinking about people pulling in and out of your property, and because of the probability of accidents in that area. Do you think you'd be petitioning the town to put up line driveway or driveway hidden by the hill kind of signs?
What we would do, Mr. Joster, and I apologize if I messed up your name, is we would reach out to Department of Public Works should this be approved and determine if they believe any signs are prudent or appropriate, and be happy to comply and assist them in any way in that process.
All right, Mr. Chairman, that was my questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. Any other questions from members of the board? All right, I don't see any. I see Russell Brown, Bo Brown has raised his hand, but he's muted right now.
I just unmuted him, Mr. Chair. I don't see the icon unmuted. I'm going to try it again. Okay, he's unmuted.
Right.
Bo Brown, go ahead.
This Russell Brown, zoning officer. The question I have, do they propose any sign at the entranceway to the driveway to the winery or to the vineyard?
At this time, we have no signage. We would propose a small sign to locate the ingress and egress, and maybe a small sign underneath that that would delineate the name. But we do not envision large signage or anything that's out of conformity with the neighborhood and the residential nature of the neighborhood.
the reason why I raise that question is that if the board sees fit to grant it, they should also, in their motion, probably have a maximum size sign that you could install. Hello?
We would have no objection to a limitation on the signage that it would, such that it would be in conformity with the surrounding neighborhood and wouldn't be an eyesore. We would simply want it to be safely visible from the roadway as people are going by.
Correct. I have no other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Karen, how is that otherwise regulated? If I own a business in town and I want to put a sign up, how do I go about doing that? Do I need a sign permit for each and every sign?
You do. There is a section of the zoning ordinance, chapter 1824, that regulates signs, and the type of signs that are allowed in residential zoning districts are very limited. So as Bo said, allowing a sign for this particular use would be part of the special use permit. So I think, Stephen, it would be a good idea for you to propose a specific size that the board can approve, which was Bo's suggestion. You can't just say a small sign. You have to say, like, what's the area of the sign? 2 by 3, something like that. You just have to give the board something to work with.
2 feet by 3 feet would be sufficient, Karen. And that would include both the name of the vineyard as well as noting the entranceway.
Okay, so it's like 6 square feet?
Yes, that would be fine.
I'm sorry, so like what, 6 square feet you said, right?
Yep. And yes, he would need a sign permit, but he would get the sign permit as long as the sign is specifically mentioned in the special use permit.
So did Mr. Brown save the Dales a trip back before us? Sounds like he might.
He very well could have,
All right.
because I didn't think of that myself either.
Well, we thank Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
And we thank his years of experience.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you both. All right. Any other questions before we see if any members of the public, I do see some people here, have any questions? Anything from the board? Seeing none. Karen, can we just open it for public questions or comments?
You can.
Do we need a motion?
Nope.
All right, I see one hand is up, which is Ruth Barrington and Ralph Murphy, 2 folks who are together on one device. I will unmute you or ask to unmute you. All right,
Hello.
go ahead.
Hi, Ruth Barrington and Ralph Murphy. We're direct abutters of the property next door. We're at 10 Beaver River Road. We did submit a letter on the 12th of May about some of our concerns. I can't say that anything that I've heard tonight makes me feel any better about it. When you look at some of the hours that are being proposed, with 11 vehicles, you could be up to 77 vehicles a day, assuming people only stay for an hour. This is a dangerous road. It's a residential road. We've tried to keep it that way, residential, rural. It's residential zone. I'm really very much opposed to consideration of a commercial property in our residential neighborhood. You kind of open the door with one thing that sounds like it might be on the small side, but might grow, might be this, might be that. And what do you have next? It's fine to talk about the agricultural nature of this road. At this point in time, other than some beautiful gardens that many of my neighbors have and their lovely grapevines, the agriculture is pretty much confined to the turf fields at the other end of the road, which is totally different geographically. And again, it's not a commercial entity. It's also, no one has mentioned the fact that this property is a vineyard and a wine tasting area and a wine selling area next to a playground. That when you come over that hill, their entrance and egress that they were proposing to use is at the bottom of a hill. I mean, there's, you know, the gentleman, board member, you know, mentioned how dangerous it is to be on a bicycle. It is. And the kids are constantly going up the road on their little vehicles and bicycles, and it's just inappropriate. I think it's one thing to grow something. I think it's another thing that if they want to sell it on a commercial basis, then it should be sold somewhere else. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? If you're on your, I see hand raised, Scott W. Flood. You could unmute yourself.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
I can.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the board's time this evening. I'd just like to say that I'm from New Hampshire and I'm not in your local area, but I am interested in this this endeavor. And I'd just like to ask the board and the community to consider, you know, the beauty of what vineyards look like around the United States. In addition to that, you have a lot of old style vines and grapes that used to be grown in New England and have gone by the wayside over the years. And the Dales are trying to bring some of those old style heirloom grapes back to the region. And I think that's something that should be applauded. And I would just ask you to consider the potential of the increase in the beauty of the community and the value of the community that vineyards typically bring. I think you just go, there's no dispute that if you look around at vineyards around the United States, how beautiful they are. And I think that would be a plus for the community. So I would just ask you to consider those items. Thank you.
Thank you. I see the phone number 401-741-3205 has their hand raised. If you could press *6 to unmute yourself. There you go.
Hi, my name is Nancy Gardner. I live at 23 Beaver River Road. I'm right across from them. I just have a couple of questions too, because where my house is and where their vines are, that's fine. I don't mind them growing grapes, that's fine. My concern is where are you going to put that outbuilding or that barn?
Attorney
Is there
Sergeant or Dale?
If I could, Mr. Chairman.
Of course. Go ahead.
Is there a specific area that you do not want it? Or is there a specific concern you have? In the alternative, it's hard to describe it. And unfortunately, if we're in a traditional setting, I could point to a map, but I can't do that here. So I can venture to describe you in the mapping.
You probably, you know where my house is and you know where my driveway is. Am I going to like come down the driveway, or is it going to be right? My question is it going to be right in front of my house?
No, not
I
at
know
all.
right now. Okay.
It's going to be set back from the roadway, and that as you come down your driveway, the vegetation that you see now is what you will continue to see. So as you said, you might see a little bit of the roof line, but you will not be driving down your driveway, looking as if you're going to, and if you miss, hit a building directly on the other side of the road.
Okay. I have another question. I don't know that much about grapes. Do you have to water them, or do they just? Are you watering them, and do you get the water from the river, or how are you watering them?
Yeah, for grape development, basically vines kind of stick to themselves after about 3 years. So the answer is we're irrigating them now using well water for the first 3 years, and then after that the grapes don't need any additional irrigation. So it's a short-term irrigation for 3 years, and sporadically we're doing that if necessary. Grapes are very, very hardy plants, and they don't need a lot of water.
Okay. And my last question is about the vapors. You said they're going to be contained on your property, so I'm not going to be having anything drifting up my way?
I can assure you that my 90-year-old mother-in-law sits in the house above the basement that we make wine in now, and the wine fermentation smell, which is at its strongest for about 7 days, as I described, in open vats. It doesn't even make it up into her upstairs. It actually, you only smell it when you're down in the room downstairs, and after 7 days, there's no smell at all. So. It does not permeate. It doesn't emit. It doesn't go outside. We don't open windows, and you don't smell wine vapors through the neighborhood. It doesn't work that way.
Okay, and also where the driveway is going to be, is that on the playground side, or is that like on the other side of your house?
It's on the other side of the house. It is, I would.
So in front of my house, basically.
I'm not sure. I think your driveway is offset from our driveway. I think
right. Not my driveway, but my house, because my house is on the other side of my driveway. So it would be like in front of my house.
I apologize. I guess I don't. When I come out of that driveway, I don't see a house. So I just see a hill. So you must be up and over.
I'm on the hill. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So coming in and out of that driveway, like I said, when you come up to the top of the driveway, you're just looking at a hill, and I just see vegetation on the other side of the hill. So
if you can't see the driveway currently, then you will not see it, as we're not going to change its layout or any of the vegetation around it.
Okay. All right, and then my only other concern would be like the other neighbors about, kids going to the playground and more traffic, and because it is such a small rural road. I've lived here for 32 years, and a lot of changes have taken place since I've been here. But, I'm just concerned about the kids and the people walking their dogs, and a lot of people walking on this road, and it's dangerous on that curve there.
So we are well away from the curve, and we will work with your police department and your public works department to make sure that there are appropriate signage to address any and all potential issues with regards to people walking or traveling along the side of the roadway. And this is not, from the outside, you are not going to know, with the exception of the small 2x3 sign that we addressed earlier at the request of your zoning official, you are not going to see this operation from the roadway. There's going to be no substantial change in the viewscape or in the access point. The access point to the roadway that we're intending to use exists now and has existed for some period of time prior to Mr. and Mrs. Dale purchasing the property. We would also be happy to put signage just inside of the driveway as people are exiting, to note that there are often pedestrians and bike riders on the roadway, and to be wary of them, and to abide by all speed limit signs, and that they are strictly enforced by your police department.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. I see Ellen Fales has her hand raised. If you could unmute yourself, Ms. Fales.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Ellen Fales, I live at 9 Beaver River, so a couple houses down from the Dales. And Mr. and Mrs. Dale, it's nice to meet you. I know you've been here a long time, and we have too. I certainly think it's wonderful that you're growing the grapes. I walk with my grandson on the playground, and I've been following your progress and looking over at them, and they look great. They're growing really well. As a gardener, I'm really always happy when somebody else is really successful with something. I guess my concern is, and I was one of the abutters that wrote a letter too. My concerns really do revolve around the wine tastings and the number of people. And I guess I've never been to a wine tasting. So I guess my question is, how long do people stay when they come? Are they there for the afternoon, or just a couple hours, or what would the flow be? Say for an afternoon wine tasting. And can you just tell me again what the hours, what you anticipate the hours of operation would be?
Yeah, do we have that in the, I think we provided that to the town, but hang on one second, we will. Is it 10 to 5 on Saturdays and Sundays and holidays?
Okay. So technically there could be, 11 people at a time, but they would only be staying for an hour, whatever, buying their wine and then going.
Well, no, not necessarily. And our on-site sales are very limited. We also intend to have tours at the facility and allow people to walk in and amongst the grapevines and around the edges of the facilities to understand the production of the grapes and to understand the entirety of the process. So our tasting room is just one part of the aspect of why people would come to the winery. It's to experience a small scale winery, to experience the process, to get walked through all of the steps, mechanics, and blood, sweat, and tears that go into making a small batch wine. So it is not something that we're not looking to get people in and out of here as fast as possible. We're actually looking to get people to come here and experience the entirety of the vineyard process and not just the wine itself.
So would you be offering tours or?
Yes, most definitely.
So that would be by kind of like reservation. People would, if they wanted to come, they would have to plan in advance to do that.
We've discussed that, and it's hard for us to predict, but if we reach a point where there is even the slightest bit of concern about parking or aspects of that, we would institute a ticketing system and a time system such that people would need pre-reservations in order to prevent there from being any impact on the roadway.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Mr. Chairman, this is Daniel Jarster. I want to interrupt. I'm thinking back to where we started. I believe either Mary Ellen or Karen said that the attorney, that the actual applicant needed to be to testify. And I think some of what we're hearing now is testifying, in my opinion. I don't know if that's appropriate or not.
You are absolutely correct. You get the gold star of the night.
Thank you for.
Well, I can say that.
Thank you for keeping Attorney Serta in the line.
Just put into the record is all accurate and correct.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. Miss Fales, go ahead. I think we might have cut you off.
Oh, no, that's all right. So I guess my only other question is, I've never been to one of the local breweries, but my children have said, we went, that place was mobbed kind of thing. You don't anticipate that this would then be that kind of a situation where there would be so many people coming in on a Saturday afternoon that, that you wouldn't be able to manage it. I guess my concern is, cars parked along the road, cars parked over at the playground kind of thing where people would want to come and there would really be a lot of commotion.
No, and I think that it was said earlier, but if it got to that point, we would manage it. I guess that's the best way to say it. Because, again, my wife and I love this town, love this street. We certainly don't want to be, contributing to, to it having its additional issues. We want to be able to have an experience that people enjoy coming, We love this process. My wife especially loves the wine process. I didn't even drink wine until I married my wife, and she thoroughly enjoys it. It's been such a pleasure for us. We want to be able to share it, and quite honestly, we're excited about it. We're excited about what we do. We think we make really good wine. We'd love to have you come and we can show you what we're doing. But in reality, in the long run, if it gets to a point where other people are really excited and enthusiastic about it equally, and they want to come so much, we'll have to manage that situation to an extent that it won't impact, the traffic on the road.
I'm sorry. If it gets to a point where other people want to come and then I didn't hear you.
Yeah, then I said that then we would take affirmative steps to manage it.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments or questions? See, Ruth Barrington and Ralph Murphy raise their hand. Go ahead. You just have to unmute yourself.
Hi, sorry again. Just a comment from the attorney's words about, signage from Public Works, the mile per hour speed sign. All of that is already in existence on Beaver River Road. It's supposed to be a 25-mile-an-hour road. It's not adhered to, unfortunately. And when you're coming from the far end of Beaver River Road, going towards 138, where this entrance to the boutique winery is proposed, that is at the bottom of a blind hill. That can't be changed, and I would not like to see it changed, obviously. We've had to oppose widening of Beaver River Road on previous occasions, and I don't want to have a commercial enterprise being a reason why all of a sudden the road does need to be widened. And I've been in the town and on this property long enough to remember when a young man was killed on Route 112 when a car came over a blind hill and he was just there. And I would hate to see us in that kind of a predicament. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, I don't see any others. Anything else from members of the board? All right, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
I so move that we close the public hearing. This is Daniel Jarstfer.
Do we have a second? See, Jeff is indicating a second. All in favor? Aye.
This is Daniel voting aye.
And did we lose Sean in the mix? Sean Carney?
He's the host. I don't know how you could lose him.
It's Sean Lacey.
Well,
Second.
Sean Carney,
It looks
I'm
like,
sorry.
yeah, it looks like we might have lost Sean Carney from the phone call. I still have, but the other members, we still have Lindsay, we still have Karen Bizzano on the line. as well.
Correct. Who is our first alternate?
I think I'm the second alternate.
Okay, thank you, Karen. So that makes
I think
Lindsay
Karen
our,
Bosano is the first alternate, and I think Lindsay is the second, I believe.
First alternate is Lindsay Hannon.
Oh, okay.
I have it written down. Sam sent me that.
so Lindsay, if you could just unmute yourself. We have a motion and a second. We're taking a roll call vote to close the public hearing.
I vote to close the meeting, the public hearing meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Lindsay. Discussion amongst members. What do we think about this application? Jeff has a grin, so I'll start with Jeff. That's always a good spot. You can just unmute yourself.
There we go. I shouldn't be grinning then. Yeah, I mean, I'm all for someone having a wonderful garden and grapes and so forth and so on. I feel for the concern of having a commercial alcohol-based establishment within a residential area next to a playground. There you go.
Where are you at? Where does that leave you? You're on the fence?
Yeah, I'm on the fence.
Okay. Here's where I'm at. I think it's sufficiently small. I'll bug the lawyers in the room. Narrowly tailored to achieve a goal that the Dales are trying to achieve while not disturbing the rest of their neighbors. It seems like a small operation. We did hear from some people who are concerned about Beaver River Road. That's it. It sounds like it's a dangerous patch of road. It's not as though this is a new structure going, a new residence going up and a new field being planted. This is pre-existing. The Dales are where they are. To that point, I think the limitations on parking and with that traffic are such that it's not an inherent danger on this road.
Yes.
Well, Nick, they are existing, as you say, not a new residence or anything else, but there's future plans of a 3,000 some odd square foot building and future parking to go along with that. And I don't know about the woman Ruth, perhaps, who was asking about how that was directly in front of her property or not. But as the applicant was describing, well, when I come out the driveway, all I see is a nice rolly hill. This particular person may be up on the hill, so when that 2,000 or 3,000 square foot commercial structure gets put on, he still might not be able to see her, but she may be able to see that 3,000 square foot building from the hill height of, 40 feet above grade from where he is or whatnot,
Sure. Karen, I see your hand is raised.
If the board makes a finding of fact that Beaver River Road is a dangerous road because of its width and its topography, and that there is a public playground not too far from the subject property, you have the authority to place limitations on the number of people who can visit and tour the vineyard and winemaking operation at any one time. You could, for instance, require the Dales to have people make reservations and to limit the number of people who are there at the same time.
Well, exactly how far away is this?
Who's speaking?
Chelsea Batinger.
Okay.
How far away is this playground?
Sure, if you have an estimate, Mr. Dale. Mr.
Yeah.
Dale may have an estimate for you if you will permit us here, Ms. Bettinger, Mr. Chairman.
Sure, of course.
From the playground itself, it's across the entire front of our property is roughly about 300 feet to the property line. And then the playground is on the opposite side of the property. So I would estimate 700-800 feet, maybe 1,000 feet away from the driveway cutout.
And a majority of that is vegetated, correct, Mr. Dale?
All vegetated.
So it would not be visible?
No, it would not.
Visibility is not the problem. Safety is the problem.
This is Nick Solitro. I just have a question. Mr. Dale, does the playground have a parking lot?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So it's not as though people have to park on the street or walk a distance. Presumably they can park in that parking lot and walk safely to the playground, correct?
Yes, they do.
With the exception of course, maybe somebody lives nearby, doesn't want to drive, but I believe I've been to the playground having twin 2-year-olds, and I remember parking in the parking lot right there. To me, that at least alleviates the playground concern, that spot is an option for people who choose to use the playground.
Mr. Chairman, are you chairman or president? Which is the right way to address you?
My gut reaction is just call me Nick, but I think it's chair. I think.
Mr. Chairman, this is Daniel Jarstfer. One of the questions I think that Jeff raised was there's alcohol produced and consumed near the playground. My experience with wine tasting, it's very limited. I've been to wine tastings around the country, and there's very little wine consumed. And of course, we know wine typically is a little bit higher than beer consumption. as far as the alcohol content per ounce. But for that reason, most wine tastings limit the amount that's consumed on the premises. I guess the question I would have for Mr. Dale is, you might well know the statute better than I do. Is there in the statute that you'll be operating under, did they limit how many ounces a visitor can consume in a visit?
I don't recall seeing that in the statute.
Okay.
But obviously, Mr. Jasper, the parties have an obligation to both not overserve participants, and also the goal here is to give people a small taste of the wine, not a full drink.
Right. Yeah, the goal isn't to belly up at the bar and have at it. It's, small, maybe an ounce or two, and maybe about an ounce, usually all you get in a tasting.
And that's been our experience as well.
Karen's raising her hand. Daniel, is that all you had right now?
Yes.
All right, Karen, go ahead.
I just want to remind everyone that the public hearing is closed. So it would not be appropriate to ask any questions of the applicant right now.
Okay.
If you want to ask questions of the applicant, you would have to vote to reopen the public hearing, which you can do. But otherwise, you should just be talking among yourselves.
Karen Bazzano, go ahead.
I don't have a question, but I am in the beverage marketing and liquor sampling business.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. So all of what they do on site, if it's passed, will be very regulated. I believe that in Rhode Island, it's 1.5 ounces of wine that can be sampled. So they will be very regulated by other rules. And it is all about very small samples. All of the wine tastings that I've attended in Rhode Island have been very well managed. The rules, the size of the samples are clear, and it's not a hang around and socialize. It's more of an educational seminar to learn and taste. And in fact, there's very often occasions where there are spitting buckets and people don't even swallow all of the wine. So if you haven't been to a wine tasting, it's really not about consuming and enjoying full glasses of wine at all. It's more of education supported by a sample, and it's all very regulated by the laws.
Yeah, Karen, that was my recollection too. I've dealt with a few of these matters, and I don't recall exactly what the general law is, but I remembered it was 1.5 ounces, and I'm sure Attorney Surdit would have a conversation about the extent of civil liability if there's any overserving there, which I don't think is lost on the Dales.
One more thing I'd like to say among our group, and I don't even know if I'm supposed to because I'm an alternate and maybe you don't need me to, but yes, that's okay.
Yeah, you could speak.
I did go by the property, and the one thing, knowing, wine tastings in this situation pretty well, I did just want to see the proximity to the playground. And I would say that there's no flow. It doesn't feel like, even if I was kind of thinking about if people were coming and going, and it didn't feel like it would impact the playground piece of it at all, or I would be very vocal against it. But it seemed very separated, and where they want to put things and sort of the vegetation, it seemed very separate to me.
Any other comments from members of the board?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman, and maybe Karen knows. If we grant this variance, special use permit, does that necessarily then approve the moving of ahead with their building of a structure? Is that assumed that that's a done deal too?
It's not assumed. You would have to make it specifically a part of your motion.
So if we restricted in the motion that they'd have to revisit the zoning review board when they came to build a building, we could do that.
You can do that. The way that you would want to do that is you would be granting the special use permit for the manufacturing use, but you would not be granting the portion of the application that requests a separate building for wine manufacturer. And you would be requiring the applicant to return for another special use permit specifically to construct the barn.
Again, talking amongst ourselves, I appreciate the fact that they want to have a structure that's architecturally appropriate for the setting, which would make it, it wouldn't, to me, it doesn't seem like, if it's in accordance with the picture that we're seeing, that it would not look like a commercial structure. It would not transform the piece of property to look like a commercial operation.
Right. I think it's very tasteful. I think it's very nice. It's not your typical, say, commercial quote unquote structure. I agree.
Again, Karen, question for you as the solicitor. In the motion, can we, if we approve the special use permit, including the structure, can we specify that it must be, I mean, they've made an application with that. Is that binding? They said they're going to build something like that, or can we specify that it must be consistent with that?
You can say that it must be consistent with the site plan that was submitted with the application. And
Okay.
you can also limit the size of the building and the distance from the wetland buffer.
I think we lost Jeff now, so.
Uh-oh. Yeah, you need to
I'm
get
glad
Jeff
we have
back.
2 alternates tonight. So just again, talking amongst ourselves, my personal position, I'm prepared to grant the special use permit as presented. I know, Daniel, you've had a few concerns. I don't know if you wanted to make a motion to grant it with conditions, what have you. Since we're spitballing here, that's at least where I'm at.
Okay.
I think, Nick, I think you need to wait to get Jeff back,
Okay.
because otherwise you're not going to have your quorum.
Yeah, we have two
So we have
alternates.
2 alternates, myself, Daniel, and Chelsea.
I don't think Karen was here for the whole public hearing, was she?
Karen joined us at around 7:07 tonight, shortly after the meeting began.
Probably was.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was.
I think you should try to get Jeff back before you go to the 2 alternates. Sean, maybe you can give him a call,
Yeah, I could try giving him a call to see if I can get him back on here.
because he might be trying to get back on.
I'll try calling him right now.
Oh, boy. Sorry about that. Let me mute myself.
And here's Jeff. All right, Jeff's back.
Okay.
Hey, I'm back.
I think we're missing a steno now.
What happened?
Mary Ellen went to stifle her dog, I think.
All right. I apologize for whatever happened. Where were we with that? We had that
Mary Ellen's back.
last question I was at was where the playground is adjacent to the property.
I think Mr. Dale answered that question. I don't recall exactly how far he put it, but then I followed up with a question that the property, whether or not the property, the playground had its own parking lot, which it does. And then we had some additional discussion.
Is it the adjacent parcel?
I believe it is. I believe, I know that the applicant's not able to answer questions, but I've been to the playground often, not to play on the playground equipment, but to walk back in through there. And it does abut on there. You can see from certain portions of that piece of property, you can see the vineyards my wife and I and her mother walk over there, and we've seen the development of the vineyard readily from the property. I mean, it's not, the playground itself it's away from the property, but that piece of property, Beaver River Park, does abut, and if you're walking the path, you'll come right along the property line.
This is Chelsea Batinger. I believe the applicant testified that the playground is 700 to 800 feet away from
I think he's talking about the entrances.
from their driveway.
The playground structure or the entrance is 700 or 800 feet away.
Yes, I believe so.
But the parcel is adjacent to the other, their neighbors, the park property line and the applicant's property line, they're abutters directly.
Yes, this is Chelsea Batinger. I believe they said that there's some vegetation between them, but yes, it's only about 800 feet away.
Yeah, this is Daniel. The vegetation nearer the road is thick and you can't really see the house through there. But as you move further back off the property, I'm going to say maybe 250 feet, then the park property opens up and, it's not quite so dense and you can see across into the vineyard. I don't necessarily remember seeing the back of their house though. So there's other vegetation in the area. It's not like it's a wide open space between the two.
I do see that Russell Brown has his hand up, so I'm going to unmute Mr. Brown or attempt to do so. It's not letting me.
Mr. Chair, I will try to unmute.
It looks like actually.
Oh, okay, he's on.
Yeah. Karen Ellsworth brought the attention that you'd close the public hearing and the board should just discuss the issues.
Oh, that was your point, Bo?
Yeah. Yes. Right.
Okay.
Karen Ellsworth already addressed that to you.
Okay. Thank you.
I think they're inching their way toward making a motion.
And just to get you up to speed, Jeff, while you were having some technical difficulties, we did talk about potentially, and this was at Daniel's suggestion, putting conditions on any granting of the special use permit if that's necessary. I know you had, it seemed like you had some inclinations against it. I don't know if conditions such as, I don't know how many cars are there on a given day would persuade you to be inclined to grant this petition, but that was some of what we were talking about while you were gone.
Yeah, I think when we form our motion, we should make it part of the approval that the limits in signage to a 2x3. That was what was offered, and I think we should specify that. I'm not opposed to the special use permit. I'm trying to keep in mind our other property owners, other residents of Richmond that live thereby and the concerns they have. Some of you have probably sat in on the town council meetings, and Nell is quite adamant that she recognizes she represents all of the town and wants to look what's in it for the town. And I know we're not the town council, but I appreciate that that we represent Richmond as a whole, and particularly concern for those who abut the property. So obviously we can't do anything about the traffic on the road. But if there's a motion, Karen, is it appropriate to make a motion? Nick, I know you said in favor. Were you
This is Chelsea Batinger. I just have one quick question for Karen. Karen, with the sign, isn't there a setback requirement from the roadway as well for the sign placement?
Well, you're not allowed to put the sign in the street right of way.
Okay.
And the street right of way is almost always a lot wider than people think it is. So I think that would take care of that.
Okay.
I don't think you have to worry about distance away from the street because they would not be allowed to put it anywhere in the street right of way.
And it wouldn't block anybody's view coming out of the driveway?
No, not if it's not in the street right of way, it wouldn't.
Okay.
Chelsea, where are you on this?
I had a concern with the wastewater going into the residential septic, but I think the applicants testified about what's actually in their wastewater. I was concerned with chemicals used to sanitize the winemaking equipment, but based on their testimony, it seems that there's not any harmful chemicals used. I also had concern with the parking. From the site plan that they provided, it looks like a smaller area that they're trying to construct this parking area. But if they're limiting it to, I think, 11 vehicles, I think it will be okay. The driveway also doesn't appear to fit 2 cars coming in each direction. But again, if it's a small operation, I don't think that will be an issue traffic wise. So I think I'm satisfied with their testimony, especially about the wastewater and how many gallons per day they're using.
Okay.
Yeah, on the wastewater issue, being a winemaker, I've never had an issue with my own septic. It's a residential septic, but knowing what the sulfides do, they kill yeast, which is wild bacteria. On the scale that they're going to need to use it for that much wine, they may introduce so many sulfides in there that they kill the natural flora of the septic tank and find that it has to be pumped more often. They may end up with septic issues, which could create a challenge. I guess, I don't know. We don't know where that's their trouble. But that is, just my own observation to your question, Chelsea.
Karen, would it be appropriate on this one, like we did with the solar application, to ask you to write a written proposed decision? And I only say that because there's a decent amount of material and my notes are a mess.
I can do that.
I just think for clarity purposes, that's especially with something where a lot of questions have been had, a lot of information has been put forth in a couple waves to the board, some of which more recently, and one thing I wanted to mention, Karen, your questions to the applicants I found to be very helpful. So I do appreciate your work there.
Yeah, they were, Mr. Sordat was not supposed to take my questions and write down answers to them. That was not why I sent them. That's all right, Stephen. I'm not. Yeah.
It helped, however it worked out, it helped me because those are a lot of the questions that I had. So.
Yeah, I think that I've heard enough from all of the board members so that I can draft a decision with findings of fact that reflect what everybody said. I can also put parts of it as alternative language so that you can read it and you can pick which parts of it you want to vote to approve and which parts of it you don't want to vote to approve in terms of the language. If that sounds like it would work, I can do that for your next meeting.
Yeah, I certainly would like that. I don't know if any board members have an issue with that, but I certainly like it.
Nick, a quick question. There's I'm away from my paperwork. There's a retail area that's proposed?
It was, I forget the language they use. Maybe somebody can help me out.
I'll check Jeff, I'll check to see what they said in the application material that they submitted, and I'll use that language.
Right, so I'm just going over it because we're talking about many aspects of this. We're talking about, we're talking about the winery grow area, and then we're talking about the process that Chelsea was talking about with the chemicals and things like that. And then we have a touring group area that we're talking about, and an on-site consumption area, and we're also talking about a retail market area.
All of that, with the exception of the touring of the vineyards, would take place in that building.
I'm
That's the
sorry,
purpose-
say that again, Karen?
That would be the purpose of the building. The building would be where the wine is manufactured. That's what they would give people tours of. That's where they would either sell wine by the bottle or provide wine by the glass or samples. The only other place where tours would take place would be outdoors in the vineyard itself.
Right.
I believe their site plan shows that the parking for visitors would be directly in front of the barn that they propose to build.
Gotcha. I understand. So that's why I just wanted to clarify. We're either voting to approve or deny these multiple things as one item.
Right, and I would, in the draft, I will mention all of the different aspects of it. Yeah.
And they can also import and export wholesale wise from here.
They can. I believe that Mr. Dale said they don't intend to do that. They would be permitted to do that under the state law.
But it's within their right, as I
Yeah.
heard.
Well, what they are permitted to do is buy grapes to supplement their own harvest for the first 3 years of operation.
Right. Okay, no, when I was listening, it was like, you know, we're only going to do this to begin, but it's within our rights to be able to expand it beyond what we're talking about tonight.
That's why I said that if any of you are concerned about the intensity of the use, you could add conditions that would limit the number of people who can visit at the same time, or you could limit the number of bottles or the amount of output, anything like that. When I give you the draft, you of course are free to make any changes to it that you want to make. So if you have something specific that you think should be added to the decision, write it down and save it. And when you consider the draft, you could make a motion to add it to the draft or take something out of the draft.
Mr. Chairman, this is Daniel Jarstfer. I wouldn't be in favor of limiting the amount of product beyond what the law allows, because you don't want to restrict the commercial viability of the operation.
Mr. Jarstfer, could you please start again? I'm sorry. You wouldn't
I'm
be
sorry.
in favor?
I wouldn't be in favor of restricting the quantity of production because we don't want to jeopardize the commercial viability of the operation. They need to cover their overhead and expenses. Perhaps I might be in favor of a restriction on wholesale selling, which they've said they're not really interested in anyway, or limit the quantity of wholesale selling.
Yeah,
But
I agree with you there. And as far as any conditions, I mean, if I had to pick a condition, if you will, that this specific spot would be appropriate for, maybe cars per day. That would alleviate a lot of neighbors' concerns. I already tipped my hand saying I'm satisfied as is, but if it is persuasive to other members of the board, I'd be on the side of limiting maybe to a certain amount of cars or visitors per day. That eliminates the safety concerns that were raised by neighbors. But
I can add that to the draft and you can vote on whether you want to leave it in or take it out.
okay. And again, not my first instinct, but if that helps people on this decision, I'm open to it.
I have a concern of the lot getting full and then the overflow of people parking on the side of the road, and the road is already narrow. I don't know if we could require some kind of no parking signage along the side of the road, or have something where the applicants would have to put up a rope or something if the parking lot is full and direct traffic away. I don't know what we can do as the zoning board as a
If
condition.
you do anything like that, if you make a finding of fact to support it, such as that the road is narrow and not very safe, and there are children who use it, things like that. But I'll draft some language for you and put it in the draft, and you can pick and choose what language you want to keep.
Karen, to that end, I'd be satisfied if something language that they talked about having reservations, that maybe just, we say that, concerned about the amount of traffic, the limited parking, no place to park. If we just, from the outset that they manage how many people are coming and going.
Right, I'm gonna put language like that in there too. When you see it, you can discuss it among yourselves and vote on it and decide if you want to keep it in there or take it out.
Yeah, I think that's the move, Karen. I think that's the best for this particular proposal to go that
Yeah,
route.
I'll go over my notes and I'll think of any possible option that I can give you, and I'll write it all down so that it will be like a smorgasbord and you can pick what you want.
Okay. All right. So does that just bring us to adjournment, Karen?
Yeah, you want to continue this matter, even though you've already closed the public hearing, you want to continue this matter to September 28th for a decision.
All right. I will make that motion to continue this matter to 9/28 for a decision. Is there a second?
Second.
That's Jeff Valencourt. All in favor?
Aye.
This is Daniel, aye.
And Karen Bizzano?
Aye.
All right. So that will be continued to 9/28. That just leaves us with adjournment. I'll make a motion to adjourn. This is Nick Solitro. Is there a second?
This is Chelsea Batinger, second.
All right. I have a second from Chelsea. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Karen?
Can I make sure who voted on the previous motion? Because I only heard 3 or 4 people say aye.
I did have all 5.
Can you tell me who they were?
Yes. Nick Solitro, Chelsea Battinger, Jeff Valencourt, Daniel Josepher, and Karen Bizzano.
Thank you.
And then we just had a
Same voters.
adjourn. I believe Chelsea seconded, and we had the same folks in favor.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, for your time this evening.
Thank you, everybody. Stay well.
Jeff, just before you go, I don't want to make you unhappy at the end of the evening. The town council voted to appeal the Superior Court decision in the Freepoint Solar case. The petition for writ of certiorari is going to be filed on Wednesday. I think you're smiling.
You talking to me? Oh, who's that? Daniel? Oh,
Jeff,
Oh, did you just say they voted to appeal?
the town council voted to appeal. The appeal is not automatic. We have to convince the Supreme Court to hear it.
you're very persuasive, though, Karen. So I'm not worried about that.
Well, they very
second.
seldom grant petitions for writ of certiorari to review zoning cases.
Why? They're so exciting.
Well, I know. Why? I think so too. Just out of curiosity, I went back and checked to see how many they have granted in the past 3 years. The only one they've granted in the past 3 years was another one that I wrote for another lawyer. So this is going to be like against the odds here. So I don't know what's going to happen, but
We'll see. We'll see.
we'll have to see.
All right. Thanks, Karen. All right, everybody.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Hey, good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.